Namaste and greetings. I, Yashika, researcher at IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, प्रभाव एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्था नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. We are gathered here for the fourth day of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Cohort 2, Awareness of Policies and Governance. An online national spring school program, a 4-week online immersive certificate training course. This training program is organized by IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. The chair of this program is Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI, New Delhi. This program has an excellent panel of experts who will be sharing their expertise for the duration of this program. The distinguished expert panel includes Advocate Dr. Flavia Agnes G, Advocate Dr. Albertina G, Dr. Wahida Nainar G, Professor Vijay Lakshmi Nanda Ji, Professor Vina Vaswani Ji, Miss Anju Dubey Pandey Ji, Dr. Padma Diosthali Ji, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam Ji, Maya Avasthi Ji, Advocate Celine Thomas Ji, Professor Soumya Uma Ji, Dr. Kirti Ji, Advocate Audrey Damelo Ji, Miss Nandini Sarkar Ji, and Mr. Harish Sadan Ji. The panel of conveners comprises of Dr. Advocate Shalu Nigam Ji, Professor Gumadi Sridevi Ji, Dr. Simi Mehta Ji, and Dr. Arjun Kumar Ji. Continuing with our commitment to fostering awareness and actionable insights, I extend a warm welcome to all participants engaging in this crucial discourse on ending gender-based violence. I express gratitude for your keen interest and dedication in investing time, energy, and effort towards comprehending the intricate landscape of policies and governance surrounding this pervasive issue. Your participation plays a pivotal role in uniting practitioners and enthusiasts alike, creating a collaborative space for impactful policy research and advocacy. Thank you for your invaluable contributions to this transformative course. We have also shared the course outline and reading resources in your email for your kind person. Before we start today's session, I would like to remind the housekeeping announcements once again. Please join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Now, without any further ado, let us start our program. For our first session of the day on case studies of effective gender-based violence interventions, I am delighted to invite Ms. Anju Dubey Pandey ji, formerly specialist ending gender violence against women and team lead, gender responsive governance, UN Women India. Ma'am, you can take it forward from here.
Yashika, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you so much for setting the rules for our session today. I'm so delighted to see that, we have participants here, and I do want to start by extending good wishes to all of you on the International Women's Day that has just gone by. And this year, the theme for the International Women's Day was Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. So I also want to take the opportunity to recognize and acknowledge and thank IMPRI for organizing this very timely but very critical course on ending gender-based violence, and that clearly demonstrates the Gender Impact Studies program that my very dear friend, philosopher, and guide, as I call her, Dr. Vibhuti Patel, is leading, with, of course, support from all of you. Their commitment to investing in women's empowerment and gender equality. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I do want to extend my gratitude. It's such a pleasure to see you, Dr. Shalu Nigam, there. I think, we all lead very busy lives, but it's always such a pleasure, and you draw a lot of energy when you meet with as I say, feminist leaders and also co-travelers. So thank you so much. Yashika, what I'll do is I will share the screen, and in the meantime, just a few thoughts that I have, happy to share that with everybody. At any point of time, Yashika, if you're not able to hear me, or if there is a challenge in the bandwidth, do let me know, and I will just keep my video off. Thanks, Yashika. Even before I start, I do want to encourage everyone to keep this more as a conversation. Dr. Arjun, I hope I'm correct in my understanding that the total time that we have is about 40 minutes. So
Yes.
I can sort of share my experiences, say for about half an hour, if everybody's okay, and then maybe we keep 10 minutes for Q&A.
Perfect.
Is that good?
Yes,
And do
perfect.
alert me, we are all so passionate about these issues that many times you lose track of time because there is so much to share. But so do alert me if I am about to run over time. I would perfectly understand and stick by what you are proposing us to do. So I want to start. I know you've had a number of sessions prior to this particular one, and I don't want to go into stuff that you would have already heard. Some of it, of course, I will reiterate as I speak. And the first one of that is, of course, by now, everybody would understand that gender-based violence is both a cause and consequence of gender inequality. And it's very deeply rooted in an inequality of power and privilege. And of course, that intersects, and we'll pick up examples and we look at that when I share some of my own learning and experiences with you. And that inequality of gender intersects with, say, caste, class, religion, ethnicity, abilities, sexual orientation, to name a few. So, what I thought today, I will share examples of the work that I did with UN Women, and I really do, it's very close to my heart, and I do want to thank and recognize the role that it has played in shaping my learning and who I am. But currently, I am a regional advisor with the WHO Southeast Asia Regional Office, and I'm supporting everything that WHO is doing in this region on preventing and responding to sexual misconduct. And I hope that at another occasion, I will have time to share, a lot of stories from the current role. So also, I wanted to qualify, Arjun, that before, I'm extremely mindful of the fact that we are all going beyond the binaries, and we are looking at all diverse gender identities. But for the conversation today, I will largely focus on ending violence against women and girls, because we do know that they do tend to bear the much greater burden of all forms of violence, and particularly sexual violence. And that is directed towards them because of who they are, because of their gender, because of being women and girls, and their experiences of violence are, of course, in the larger scheme of things that we are discussing, gender-based, exactly. So, I mean, just to start, and only just one slide, and give me a moment when I move to the next. Very clearly we can see that, and this is, I'm not going to share a lot of data. I will be happy to share links that, you can go to. But we do know that more than 1 in 3 women worldwide would have experienced one or the other physical or sexual violence by a partner, or sexual violence by a non-partner. Also, we do know that more than 1 in 5 girls worldwide, they have been sexually abused in their childhood. So, but in terms of data, we'll surely come to that at some point of time in our conversation today, that, there is still so much more that we need to do. I also want to qualify that, today I'm really hoping to focus both on, I would say, examples that look at preventing violence and examples that look at responding to violence. If you look around the work and incredible work that has happened globally or in the region or in the country where we are sitting and having this conversation today, most efforts or programs or interventions have focused largely on responses and services for survivors. But, while we understand that those strategies are very essential, where we're looking at mitigating the devastating mental, physical, social, economic effects, also ensuring justice and accountability. And we do have somebody with a lot of experience in the room who you will listen to. And we prevented recurrence, but our experience has been the best way to end gender-based violence, particularly violence against women and girls, is to prevent it from happening in the first place. And I do want to, just in terms of setting the context, share with you the ecological model that everybody will be familiar with. Of course, we pulled this out of the Lancet, which looks at this multiple levels or concentric circles that are constantly, interacting with each other. They are not standalone. So starting at the individual level, where you see where are experiences of GBV and violence against women and girls located. And at the individual level, if you will see on my screen, the first red circle, or it seems like a semicircle, at the level of the individual, you see submissive femininity and dominant masculinity. I do want to quickly, qualify at this point of time that obviously these are fluid, but generic, you will see, given the socio-cultural norms, given the gender roles, given the gender stereotypes, that you do see, a story that's unfolding of submissive femininity and dominant masculinity. But gender is all about also the differentials that exist, either in geographies or, across cultures, across populations. But at the individual level, tolerance, impunity, just continuing to live with these experiences in terms of really building the whole construct on who is feminine and what does feminine mean. Mostly, of course, we know that there are exceptions, but that's what plays out at the individual level. At the interpersonal level, you see stigma, shame, and silence. A lot of that has changed over the years, and we all by now would understand gender much better. So we know that it's fluid, it's changing, it's not fixed. So even while I shared this, the dominant trends, a lot is changing. And that is the hope conversations like this give us. So like I said, individual level to interpersonal, stigma, shame, and silence across different spaces, whether it's your private space, whether it is your public space, where it is your workspace, or increasingly now we know the digital or the online space. So That's where you see how stigma, shame, and silence plays out in many different ways on really, or has played out, causing obvious confusions about where the accountability lies. And many often we still hear women and girls being blamed for, why were you there? What were you wearing? You should have called them bhaiya. I mean, I can go on, picking examples from um, what a large number of women are still doing in terms of their prep as they step out of their homes, but also what they experienced as normalized sexist and abusive behaviors within their private spaces. Then, of course, at the level of the communities, the inequitable norms and practices, and we can pick millions of examples of that, which are really individual experiences of socio-cultural norms, which result in the perpetuation of this gender inequality, that we are talking about. And then, of course, is at a much higher societal level, the discriminatory laws and policies, again, many steps forward, but a few steps backward. And it's important for us to be mindful of that, to understand that, and then look at how this imbalance of power and deeply rooted gender inequality plays out. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is because our strategies to deal with this will largely depend on what our perspective is and how we understand this. So, like I said, that I will pick examples both from prevention and response of some of the incredible work that we did with a range of individual and institutional partners. And I continue to do that even in my new role at WHO. But just to set the context, because we're talking about case studies, and Dr. Arjun, I took the liberty to to sort of not say case, because it said case studies. If I thought maybe I pick one case study, and then I was tempted, and I thought, no, what I'll do is just share a range of glimpses of snapshots of interesting interventions on addressing gender-based violence, and then we can have some quick Q&A, hoping that this conversation will continue. So if you look at really prevention initiatives around us on GBV, largely you will see some that can qualify as universal prevention, which focus on reducing violence, exploitation, and abuse at a community or at a whole of population level. And my own learning and reading through some of the research that exists is that universal prevention interventions mostly focus on awareness generation. There will be probably communication campaigns or, largely focusing on trying to achieve behavior change through awareness generation. Then you will see around yourself a set of actions or programming, which is what we call selective prevention. And that's really programs that work with high-risk communities, high-risk families or groups, or where the interventions are early to stop abuse from escalating. And I'll be happy to, share some examples of selective prevention, particularly where we were working with more vulnerable communities of women, to trafficking, for example. So where you're not really looking at reaching out to the entire universe, so to say, but more selective. And a lot of programming from where you can pick case studies actually in this particular basket or category also includes, programs with which involve men and boys and other genders. So again, you're looking at very targeted, reaching out to specific groups to engage them in preventing and responding to gender-based violence. And then, of course, are programs which are very focused, what we call the response side, where they're looking at addressing the needs of the survivors, And of course, we have, much progress has been made, but we still have a long way to go. And I can give examples currently from WHO in that, or where as part of the response, really you see reforming institutional response and, the entire, the justice process. So police health, of course, is just two that I've included here, but the entire access to justice will be part of this. But it'll also be other non-justice actors. And, again, I will be happy to share just in very brief examples of where you're looking at multi-sectoral response mechanisms, and the work that we did on safe cities as an example is a very good example of looking at multi-sectoral institutional accountability and responding to and preventing gender-based violence. While you're anyone looking at doing a range of these actions, of course, there are strategic priorities that you will have, and I'll be just happy to briefly share some of the ones that we adopted at UN Women. And I would say that's true also for other civil society, women's groups, feminist organizations that we worked with in terms of really strategizing what could we do across this prevention to response continuum. So one, of course, is the most obvious. You would all have heard a lot about that from Vibhuti, as I call her, in terms of the evidence-based research and data. And actions in this could be quite a few. I've just put a few there as examples of what we did at UN Women and also are doing in WHO, is to look at evidence-based research, better understanding how it, gender-based violence or violence against women plays out, really looking at the voice, choice, and agency of women informing the evidence that you are producing. So really bringing in their experiences of violence, the language that we use of violence, recognizing, calling it by what it is, and not, best example is eve teasing. Well, it's not eve teasing, it is where you're looking at really sexual harassment in a public space. So really also looking at the principles that inform your evidence-based research, or developing knowledge and advocacy products, or looking at developing data banks, war data banks, because that's another area where we could have a whole separate conversation on violence data, or even embedding experts with the governments, or with the both at different levels, the national and the subnational, so that you could look at engendering, as I call, the research process, because I'm assuming that this is a safe space, with IMPRI. And just to share that, one of the trends that we have seen globally, not just in India, is, while the member states might talk about evidence research, there is a general overall pushback to invest in research. So, but of course, this is where you are doing continuous advocacy on these issues. The other strategy was engendering laws, programs, and policies, again, from a gender perspective, again, looking at what are the gaps, who is drafting these legislations, where are women's voices, where are women in the legislative committees that are drafting. So really, as I say, for women, by women, and of course, also convening multi-stakeholder partnerships and dialogues, because and that's really what is critical. Otherwise, we may have very twisted notions of what women are experiencing, and it's so easy to, do like a poof and say, but well, in the name of culture or religion or a sanskar, that, well, this is who we are all about, so don't make too much of a noise about it. So really, multi-stakeholder, but also informed by the ones who are going to benefit from this. A third strategy, of course, was communication for change. And especially, like I said, most programs that look at universal prevention adopt that strategy. And so did we. I'm not going to go into the numbers, but all of you would be familiar with 16 days of activism that are commemorated every year from 25th November to 10th of December, and provide an incredible opportunity, and of course, we also use that, and you can look at, the outreach, but the conversation today is really more focused on the strategy. Another, of course, was developing innovative tech-based solutions. And, our learning of this was particularly during the COVID period, where we developed and drafted a mobile-based application called My Amber. That immediately, Amber is the Hindi word for the sky, and that gives you access to a lot of information on legislation focused on ending violence against women and girls, but also services. Another strategy that we adopted was capacity enhancement of duty bearers and institutional strengthening. That's key because, again, each of these institutions might be at a different point in time in their understanding or their initiatives, and therefore really building their capacities. And again, on the screen, you can see examples of the work that we've done with government functionaries or helplines or the one-stop centers, and all of this through, of course, our partnership with women's organizations and other civil society groups. And of course, also setting up interdepartmental committees on women's safety, because we find that mostly it tends to get pushed to the departments that are working on women's issues. At best, law will be involved. But of course, the fact that we're looking at a more comprehensive understanding and accountability of multiple departments, on this. And then, of course, the important part that, women and girls are a whole. I am one person. So my experiences of violence are located in, but also have an impact on my other areas of life. And therefore, intersectionality, for example, also with women's economic empowerment and to reduce the vulnerability. I'm also happy to share that now there is interesting evidence on this, that, when women are economically empowered, there's actually both kind of evidences that exist. There's evidence that indicates that initially there might be an increase in violence against women because suddenly, you become empowered and, those norms are being broken at home and outside, and you might feel might experience a backlash. But the heartening part is that there is enough evidence now that tells us that when women are economically empowered, then they have the ability to get out of those abusive relationships. And basis that, there was some very interesting work that we did, particularly looking at making the supply chains, the agrarian supply chains in the tea estates of Assam and Tamil Nadu, and to look at prevention of violence there. And of course, a whole lot of work on making the workplace safe and equal, including through the implementation of the POSH Act in India. I'm kind of mindful of the time because we're already at close to 6:29. I do have, examples of programmatic, action. So just allow me another 4 to 5 minutes, and then happy to have questions or reflections or conversations, So of course, we've to start with the, COVID, because that's something that is the latest of our experiences, in terms of the increase and just what happened with violence against women and girls. We do know that there was a sharp increase in domestic violence. I was looking at a data point, which is actually 2011 census. We haven't had the next census after that, such a pity. But as per the 2011 census, I think close to 80 or 81% of our population lives in 1 or 2 roomed residences. And during COVID, when we were so crammed up for days altogether, you all would have, you would know that experience by now, that there was such a sharp increase in women's experiences of violence, particularly domestic violence, and no place to go because the services were not either non-existent or not available or not accessible given the lockdown norms. So that's the time that we really worked on prioritizing what could be innovative ways of reaching services. And, of course, being mindful of the gender divide, we still looked at, developing that application for at least giving information and access to emergency services. And we focused on justice delivery. There were very interesting innovations around that, but also at the same time, a renewed focus on harmful practices. Because, then you are so confined to the space, you don't have your traditional go-to, what I say, groups you can lean on, either your relatives or women friends or other people. All of that were non-existent, and the formal ones anyway you couldn't reach. So more important to talk about harmful practices, but like I said, engaging women and girls in the entire COVID-19 response and recovery, particularly initiatives around violence, which I think with the incredible work that the women's groups have done in this country, and globally, we were able to bring the focus on that very soon. And like I said, more importantly, looking at women's addressing and reducing women's economic vulnerability. I'm not going to go through the details. I'll be happy to share this presentation with all of you, but I'm just giving you snapshots of multiple different kinds that exist, and then, some key lessons from each of these. Of course, here are numbers. Again, it was a mix, very targeted. We were looking at, strengthening capacities of healthcare professionals, law enforcement and judicial officials, women and girls who were at risk. So really doing a vulnerability mapping. Again, where we looked at women's help groups, self-help groups, and directly women in high-risk communities. The other example I want to share, and I really want you all, and I will share the links to all of this, is to please, from a prevention perspective, visit this, which is an excellent example of a resource that's very, very evidence-based. And it's one which we have developed, UN Women and WHO. It's a package of resource fully focused on prevention. So don't be misled by the word respect, because, I always say we need to move from respect to rights, but respect is each alphabet represents a particular strategy on addressing gender-based violence, particularly violence against women and girls. So it's strengthening relationships, empowerment of women, services, poverty, environments made safe, child and adolescent abuse, from a life course approach, and of course, transformed attitudes, beliefs, and norms, which is the hardest to do. But again, we'll be happy another time to go into greater details, but we rolled this out in 3 countries, and please do visit it. You will be able to actually pick out one of them or all of them together, basis the context in which you are working on addressing and preventing and responding to gender-based violence. There's one more, which is safe cities and safe public spaces. This is the closest to my heart because that's where we adopted a multi-sectoral approach, and we said, really, the goal was a city where women and girls from diverse sections feel free without fear of harassment and violence at all times, And this was a program that really went beyond the obvious partners that you can think of, which is, women's organizations or women and child development departments or law enforcement, and we went to a whole lot more: urban development, transport, health, water and sanitation, and education. And there were a number of learnings, but again, we were very clear that you're looking at policing and legal framework and support to victims and survivors, part of services, generate knowledge and evidence, and again, of course, supporting community initiatives. There were so many conversations and so many learnings out of this program in terms of how women and girls experience a public space very differently from men and boys. So, also broke a number of stereotypes around what time of the day and where women and girls experience, sexual harassment in public spaces. Just to give you an example, contrary to popular notion that, of course, the vulnerability is heightened after dark, we spoke to about over 3,500, women and girls, and about 1,000 men and boys in Delhi. And we found that they said that actually throughout the day, we feel vulnerable. And most interesting was, contrary to popular belief that when you are traveling away from your place of residence, you are probably more vulnerable, women and girls said because our mobility is curtailed, so our maximum experiences of sexual harassment are closer to where we live because our boundaries of mobility are defined. Of course, like I'm saying, a lot has changed. We developed some very innovative practices. You all would have heard of safety pin. We developed the methodology of women's safety audit. And of course, that was then developed into a phone-based application. The strategy of this particular Safe Cities program is the one that we also took to safe and equal rural agrarian spaces. And that's where we worked with, in the kind of 200 years history of the tea industry in India. This was the first time that, we had managers were like fiefdoms, and there was so much of silence on gender-based violence, particularly sexual violence, and really working with individuals and institutions and strengthening the voices of women. So interestingly, over 60% of the workers in the tea industry are women. But obviously, they're low down in the pyramid, as is the case with most workspaces. So that's another interesting one that also resulted in actually a development of a global framework on women's safety that now we are taking to other supply chains, including spices, coffee, and replicating the same model that we adopted, which focused on strengthening women's abilities and their agency, but also working with the duty bearers, whether they were managers or they were the state authorities. And as part of that, happy to share that for the first time, they actually had a woman welfare officer appointed in the history of the tea industry. So, of course, these are like islands of excellence, I call them, but we have a really long way to go. I do want to quickly share with you another one that, again, could be a case study in itself, is a prevention of trafficking initiative, which was across 6 vulnerable states in India. And again, the whole focus was prevention in the source areas, where you're looking at engagement of the community, but particularly women and girls who were at the highest risk of trafficking, in addition to all forms of trafficking for sexual exploitation. So again, where we are saying engage with the ones who you are there to serve, really, because, to borrow on a Black women's rights movement, that nothing about us without us. So keep that in mind when you're thinking through on anything that has to do with GBV, but particularly violence against women and girls. And my last one was, and again, as part of our strategy, was to look at strengthening of the legislative framework. And those are some interesting examples there in terms of the DV Act, or the sexual harassment, or the PCPNDT, or the cyber safety and IT, and of course, the anti-trafficking legislation. I'm extremely mindful of the time because I know we have other speakers. We're already on time. So I'll stop here. And like I said that, this was just to give a glimpse of the range of initiatives that exist there. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So thank you so much for your patient listening. I will stop now, and most happy to hear your reflections or any questions that you may have. If it's fine, then I will just stop the presentation so I'm able to look at some of you who have your cameras on.
Thank you, ma'am, for your invaluable insight during the session and for providing essential context and perspective. So the floor is now open for the audience. You can either raise your hand on Zoom or type in your question in the Q&A box.
It's a wonderful presentation, and as usual, I'm so inspired by whatever you have said. But just one thing, if you could more reflect on the strategy of respect, because most of us are working in communities, or we are doing that kind of work. So maybe the prevention aspect will help all of us to really understand what is happening at the global level. And secondly, about your experiences, that working with the state, and how difficult it is, as the fundings have been cut, and so many other things are going on. So maybe the kind of challenges you're facing, or those kind of experiences in that arena. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shalu, so much. And like I said, what I will do is that I will definitely share a lot of resources, including the Respect package. And basically, what the Respect package does is, and it also has an implementation guide. Essentially, like I said, that it lists out 7 strategies that are focusing on prevention of violence. And of course, some of them might seem very broad, like, when we say addressing poverty. But the interesting part of the framework is that it also has a range of case studies, or programs that have been implemented that kind of give us a glimpse into each of the strategies. So let's say that if the R is where we're looking at relationship building, then the entire package gives us examples of programs. And again, these are programs that we picked, which at least were evaluated. So, that's what I meant, that at least there is evidence that exists that these will work. So it's a set of strategies that ideally, when we are designing a program on GBV or on war, then we could look at really adapting the 7 strategies. Of course, not all together. That would be wonderful, but maybe in an incremental manner. So, in the interest of time, I will be happy to, share, and most happy to send you all the learning that exists on the Respect framework. On your second question about working, and of course, the reduction in funding when we needed it the most, just to share one figure with everyone in the room, that if I look at the total, if you see the overseas development assistance, the ODA of different countries globally, interventions on gender. I'm not even going to GBV. I'm not even going to, I'm not even coming down to that. That's even a small drop. If you look at the total pot of money that exists for gender-focused interventions, or where gender is a principal marker, is not even 4.2% globally. So, we do worry about that we're hoping, like I say, कि हम पूरी दुनिया बदल देंगे, but resources बहुत कम है. And again, to your point of working with the governments and the member states, I think, and again, assuming this is a safe space where I say Sam, Dam, Dan, Bhed, everything, I don't know if everybody understands Hindi in the room today, but if there are people who don't, my apologies, but I'm saying that strategies will need to be tailored, but our learning was that, working together, collaborations, partnerships, that's the only way to go. But given the current climate, it's also one will have to be extremely sharp and acute about, being mindful of which partnerships will work where. I'm not mincing my words on this, but I often find that when you adopt a strategy where you're holding the rights holders accountable, but at the same time we are saying we are here to handhold you, we're here to bring to you the global good practices, then it is a lot easy for them to adapt, even though there is a lot of resistance. Rather than if I go and say, well, the UN wants you to do this, please do it, they will say, please leave the room. So, again, like the strategies will have to be one, they're time consuming, they are resource intensive. But again, then I think that, we did some really interesting work on gender budgeting, including on GBV. And we found that many a times the paucity is not of resources, the paucity is only of intentions and commitment. And anything where we're looking particularly to fight for women and girls, and then I'm looking at diverse genders where the vulnerabilities are even acuter. But then we do see that, there are some changes that are happening, and those are the beacons of light that we should start showing to everybody. But working with governments, I find that if you very recently, just day before, or actually on the 8th of March, the state of Maharashtra released its women's policy. I was there when it was being drafted. It took us 4 years to get there, 4 years. So, but I think that at least we are there. It was a long drawn process. We've documented the learnings of what to do, where to go, who to go to, understanding the governance mechanism. That's crucial, because if you don't understand whose accountability is what, you will just be going in circles. I hope at least that gives some answer to your question.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
So any other questions? From the participants?
Ishmeet,
Yeah.
I have a question.
I'm Natty here.
Is the Natty?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Anju ma'am, very brilliant presentation, I must say. Thank you for giving us kind of a whole context, because I am from Sakhya Women's Guidance Cell, from College of Social Work Nirmala Niketan, and we work in 3 districts. At the grassroots, when you work, from the survivor, when she comes to us to help, from her trauma, her hand holding, and giving her skilling, and then trying to help her to rehabilitate, or sometimes to go take, refer her to other places. And same time, while doing this prevention, curative act, you have to be with the different organization who are working for the advocacy, in a sense, to effective implementation of domestic violence act, and those kind of things. So it is
Sorry, I can't hear Natty. Can you all hear her?
Yeah, hello. Neti ji, आपका शायद connection is there's some problem maybe. Could just repeat.
I think it might be a challenge with the connectivity, Yashika.
Yes, ma'am. Maybe, Nati ji, you can write down your question in the box and I'll repeat it for you.
Sure.
Maybe meanwhile, can we take up Ishmeet ji का भी एक question था ना? So Rashika, can we take that?
Yes, ma'am. Ishmiti.
Yeah, thank you, Anju, for a wonderful presentation and, in fact, a lot of awareness, about this. I also feel that, there is a lot of challenge in terms of like people are not aware of how to go about, taking projects or working on certain things. There's an intention, but whom to approach, who's the right person, how to go about it. So I think what is required is like, I mean, these resources which you are referring to us, if we could have a certain kind of a directory, or they're put in one place where, the research scholars and even the researchers, they can reach out to people. So that would be of a great help, and of course, I mean, your presentation has given me a lot of insight, and I would be writing soon to a couple of people, right?
Sure, Ishmit. Really appreciate that. One of the things that maybe we can request IMPRI, and I find that, so what I'll do is that we have a global, when I say we, I mean UN Women, has a global GBV resource. It's called End War, ENDVAW, End Violence Against Women. And that really is a go-to repository for all of you who are listening in. You will find so many resources there and across countries, so it's not just our country, but very interesting strategies, guidance notes, program designing documents, program monitoring framework. So there's a lot that exists there. But, on that note, because we're all here through the platform of IMPRI, I'd be very happy to actually request Vibhuti if, if IMPRI can do something, if there is like a digital repository, as you're saying, where the resources could be pooled. But importantly also, my own learning is that it's really through these kind of forums that we also, they also are brilliant in terms of enabling us to understand what to do, where to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
yes.
but most happy I will be sharing. I'd requested IMPRI to just allow me some time to, put the resources together, but you will all have it before your course is over.
That will be wonderful. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I see Seema's hand is up, Seema Malhotra.
Can you hear me now?
Seema, we can hear you now.
Hi, Anju. It's
Hi,
so
Seema.
beautiful.
Such a pleasure to hear you.
I swear. And, I wanted to get back into the, jump back into the work and saw your name. I said, I am going to, sign up for this. So, I just downloaded Respect. Wow, man. It's excellent. It's excellent. I've already, and I'm not into projects, but I like to create awareness now with this age. So what lovely you people are doing. Great IMPRI. Sorry, my specs are not there, so can't read. Okay, thanks. That's
Thank
what I
you.
wanted to say. No question.
Thank you so much, Seema.
Thank you.
Really appreciate and most happy to, share all the resources with everyone in the room today.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for guiding us through our first session and patiently answering all our questions. We look forward to seeing you in our future IMPRI events as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and all the best to everybody for the rest of the course, and of course for the next session, where I know you are in very safe hands and very capable hands. So all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
With this, we now move on to our next session on gender-based violence and medico-legal evidence by Professor Vina Vaswani ji, Professor, Department of Forensic Medicine, Director, Center for Ethics, Program Director, UFIC, Masters in Research Ethics for India, Yanpova, deemed to be University, Mangalore, visiting Professor IMPRI. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I would like to thank the organizers, especially the team IMPRI, Vibhuti madam, and Yashika and Shalu ma'am for all the kind of inputs and the introduction that have already been given. And I also thank actually the speaker before me made my work much, much easier by painting the whole canvas. Whereas I'm speaking more in terms of when it becomes a medical legal case, what do we have to offer? And when we do say we offer something, what is it that we are not offering? And what is the expectation and to what extent we are able to stand up to it? So I bring from greetings from Yenepoya Center for Ethics. Ours is one of the first centers which started bioethics, clinical ethics, research ethics, gender, because in a broader perspectives, research had gone much ahead where ethics was literally kept, literally trying to keep up the pace. So we are trying to integrate in every field as far as possible to apply ethics into it. But I come from basically forensic medicine. So I have no potential or direct conflict of interest to declare. The opinions that expressed are my own and cannot be related to IMPRI, although I do know that they might agree with it, but the question is, they're mine. And some content may be sensitive in nature. It is not to hurt, but to bring to the discussion the plight of few who cannot even access justice. So why do I start with forensic medicine? Because when we talk of medico-legal setting, we need to know one thing, that it started as a justice-giving exercise in the Forum in Roman Empire. It's called the Foro Romana. If you go to, even today, if you go to Rome, they show you this, which was a Julius Caesar supposed to be in the palace and where people got justice by narrating. But please remember, when you narrate something, it is the person who is the most oratorial that gets the attention of others. So when we talk of justice, we also have to keep in mind there is something that is unsaid about it. So many a times, the lie sometimes travels around the world while truth is putting on shoes. So that becomes where people scream aloud and talk about something, even though they have created injustice. It is the person who has been suffering injustice that their voices are not heard. It's just to show an example how in those days oratorial skills mattered. People specially took classes in oratory so that they could convince, they could be more influential, and they could get justice out of it. So elaborating on the medical legal cases, especially starting with domestic violence. Now, when I said forensic, it is the forum, forensics, where people come together to discuss an issue in question. So in forensic medicine, what we do, we bring our medical knowledge and try to put it before the court as an evidence or how this particular incident has impacted another person. So in other way, we are translating something from medical knowledge for a common person to get justice. Now, what happens in case of medical legal cases and domestic violence? So domestic violence is violence against women. In India, it refers to physical or sexual violence committed against a woman, typically by a man. Common forms of violence against women could be domestic abuse, sexual assault, and murder. It's impossible for me to paint the entire canvas, but I have taken 2 or 3 case studies to begin with. There are several forms of violence against women. In fact, if you look at from the birth, from the conception to the death, from womb to tomb, different stages have a different exploitation. Much of violence meted out to women, including rape, and then related to violence, trafficking, forced prostitution, domestic violence, and throwing of acid, and in the end, even organ trade for that matter, and insufficient nutrition, nourishment, nurture, so that others get better nutrition, and in the end, sometimes even fighting for space when they die. So I'm not painting a grim picture, but awareness is the beginning. If you're not aware of it, we lose out on a lot of stuff. So I also bring into my study the maternal mortality and gender-based violence. Why maternal mortality? That is that period in life when a lady is pregnant, she is delivering, she has just delivered, that she does suffer from mental anguish. One, to give birth to a male. Second, the pressure to give birth to a beautiful child. And third, to make sure that she has a normal delivery. It's almost all these things are her responsibilities. And 239,000 girls in the age group of under 5 die in each other because of their gender, in part due to unwanted childbearing practice and neglect. In 2/3 of these, roughly 66.7 are from states of Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, And also Karnataka shows a significant decrease in maternal mortality. Maternal mortality is death of the mother within 30 days of giving birth to the child. But it's also much more in some of the states. It has declined from 167 to in 2011 and 13 and to 122 in 2015 to 17. It does mean that a good amount of medical as well as the kind of awareness is increasing. But at the same time, in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, it has increased. So which also means that in the age when they're pregnant, in that period where they require more care, more medical intervention, more nutrition, more affection, timely delivery, medical services are not being meted out to them. So who does it affect when we talk of gender-based violence? In fact, it affects all strata of life today when we talk of even internationally, even the intimate partner violence even in the highly educated society. But many a times they can seek justice, whereas those with the lower levels of education, high population densities, low socioeconomic development, with higher fertility. So in these cases, it is even difficult to access justice. Besides this, mental violence continues. Actually, many people suffer mentally because of the attitudinal behavior of the patriarchal or the male members of the family, that how a lady should behave. She cannot be seen like this. She cannot be seen freely smiling and so on. When we say we are not a part of it because we are educated, we have moved away, but we also realize the huge amount of ladies who are still not able to make it to such an environment. So in all violence against women, it's almost start from womb to tomb. So we are just trying to discuss and trying to dissect out how it started. Although the Millennium Development Goal says to bring down the child mortality of 42 deaths per 1,000 live births to up to 42 deaths, is it even possible? And also, when we talk of deaths of women and girl children, 1,78,000. So when you talk of such big maternal mortality and female feticide rates, especially female feticide, it's like a genocide proportion. It's like in war, this happens. But this is not war. But it does happen because we have a kind of patriarchal belief. In fact, I don't even say it's patriarchal because we shouldn't think patriarchal is only to do with men. Women also don the same role. It's like the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. When daughter-in-law becomes mother-in-law, I suffered so much, so let me teach her also a lesson. So somewhere the spiral of the violence continues within the family. So that is how we need to look at. Many a times do not get access because it is so much common for even the police to say that, okay, you go and adjust, don't worry. You don't have to. In fact, my own student, a medical student for that matter, and myself, we hadn't got a case registered for 3 years. We really went for so many times. No, later they keep seeking permission whether to accept a complaint or not. So how do we address these problems of maternal mortality and gender-based violence? So that we have also discussed it in the end, but as a forensic services, when we offer, we do not consider ourselves to be a part of public health. So we do not make efforts to put all of them in our diagnosis. We are happy calling it medical legal. We are happy calling it the police to come in, but we do not make extra effort to elicit the history, to tag the history and give the necessary inputs as and when possible, because police are in charge, not us. We only look at the part of making it medical legal. That's done. We examine, we give a report. So then what is happening as a result? The police may not register the history the way it's given. Like I said, like a oratorial skill, here the most powerful or influential person has the history told. So he twists it in a way he can or he wants to, so that the blame doesn't come on him. So we start with a case study which is very old, but this is a benchmark case. There was this case of Dr. Alec Bourne in 1938. A 14-year-old girl was sexually assaulted by British soldiers. And she got pregnant, but she was mentally ill. When she went to different hospitals, they said, we cannot give you abortion. Sorry, you could even be carrying the future Prime Minister of England. So we cannot give you abortion. Then she came to Dr. Alec Bown. Now, in those days, what was more prevalent was Offences Against Person Act of 1861. This means you could not procure abortion for a lady unless her life was in danger. Now, she was mentally ill. So carrying on pregnancy full term, her life would not be in danger. But what would be in danger? Her health, physical, mental. And Dr. Alec Bown took a call, moral calling. He said that via health, it could affect her life. So he continued and he performed abortion on her. But not only that, he even submitted himself. He went to the police station. The proceedings began against him. There was already an Offence Against Human Person Act of 1861. Interestingly, the same act we are going to connect to the next case. So because of this instrument, he was found guilty. But there was a lot of national level debate happening. Alec Bown came to decide on his action only after knowing that the full-term pregnancy will have this lady totally a havoc in her life. It is not always necessary to die for justifying abortion. For him, even to give this lady some semblance of lesser responsibility of child rearing if he caused abortion, because she cannot look after herself, how could she look after the child? So this was one of the benchmark cases where, although it was fought in the court for a long time, the justice prevailed that he had done a good Samaritan act. So because before the medical termination of pregnancy, there used to be 30,000 to 40,000 deaths by untrained people, even in India for that matter. The law permitted abortion when pregnant girl's life was in danger. But the ethical foresight Dr. Alec Bown implored upon, and then he made it possible. So in fact, India has drawn very much in from these cases where it has made abortion liberal. I don't say legal, but medical termination of pregnancy has become liberal to the extent anybody can walk and then have them say that, okay, I would like to undergo a medical termination of pregnancy, but the reasons have to be given. Maybe the psychological or a stressful, a socioeconomic condition or humanitarian causes or whatever, but that is how it has liberalized. Now, this is the next case, and Ireland, and the same Offences Against the Persons Act. And this is a dentist from India. It was in 2012, and she literally was in pain and she knew she was going to go for a miscarriage. She asked for an abortion. But then in Ireland, the doctor said, no, 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 no. Actually, they thought her life is not in danger. But what are the flagpost signs of a life being in danger? How much time does it take from the healthy to a life going to be in danger, especially in pregnancy? So she lost her life. But there was a lesson in that, because they went on, everybody was swearing by Offences Against Human Persons Act, her life is not in danger, so we shall not do it. But then soon came a critical mass where her life was going in danger, they couldn't do anything, and she died. So the whole question of, in the wake, there was a nationwide debate, outcry over her death, including there was an amendment in the Constitution of Ireland which allowed for abortion. So abortion is regulated by the Health Act of 2018, which is regulation of termination. But this is what is to say, when you do as a moral calling, Alec Bown in 1930 saved the life. But in 2012, people were afraid to abort in Ireland till it became a law. So the question is, this is one of the perils of pregnancy, and where some of the families, I'm not talking about the liberal abortion, families do not allow the abortion to take place. So what is the difference between the law and ethics? Is there a huge difference? Is there a little difference? Or is there a minimal difference? The law is universally accepted. The law consists of set of rules, regulations you have to follow. It is legally binding, and it is imposed on the legal framework. Whereas what is ethics? Law tells you to do minimum, whereas the ethics tells you to do more than minimum, if the circumstances require. Principles that guide the society in deciding good or bad, right or wrong, and virtue from vice. So while doing so, the legal definition might not be doing good. And it takes somebody's moral calling to say, I'm going to do this, but in the best interest of the person. It regulates a person's conduct. So that it is not just sticking to the law, but making that comfortable decision which is healthy and which is also useful for the person. So although both laws and ethics are made in alignment, many times they do contradict, and most times they don't contradict. So they go side by side. We have to allow a person to think freely and to choose. And when you look at the best interest of the person, sometimes it may be against law. So similarly, when we have a child for examination in a medical legal setting, there's a child abuse, there are different types of it. My question is, the moment we make it medical legal, we do a huge injustice to the child. Why so? About 1 year back, we had a boy who was about 6 years, and he had lot of injuries on his body. He had 3 or 4 fractures which had healed at different types. And then when he came to us, first thing our postgraduate did was to call up police to make it medical legal. He had burns, cigarette butt marks. His buttocks showed electric burn. They had made him sit on that as a punishment. But even before the postgraduate came back, the family had taken the child away. So this child is lost for follow-up. We cannot even give him a first aid or follow-up. We don't even know whether the child survived. So sometimes I feel, what is medical legal doing to children, to the families who will not seek help because you're going to make it medical legal? So this is a food for thought for all of us. So in the child abuse, I just wanted to know who's keeping my time, because will you let me know? Because if you let me go on and on, I will go. So is somebody keeping my time? Will you let me know when there are 10 minutes before so I can wind up?
Yes, ma'am, I'll let you know.
How much time do I have still?
Ma'am, you can continue for another 10 minutes.
Thank you. Now we're talking about the child abuse and maltreatment. So abuse of children under 18 years by a parent or guardian, or even those who are supposed to look after temporarily or for a longer duration. So that amounts to child abuse, and it's very, very rampant. So WHO defines child maltreatment of all types of physical and emotional maltreatment and sexual, including the neglect, negligence, commercial or other exploitation for of the child, which results in actual or potential harm to the child's health, survival, development, or dignity in the context of a relationship of responsibility, trust, or power. So child maltreatment is classified into physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional or psychological abuse, and pure simple neglect. Because when a child is talking with a huge interest, and parents are the guardians keeping such a deadpan face, immediately it triggers a rejection in the child. The children go for what is called a temper tantrum, and they also develop a kind of anxiety associated with neglect. So many a times parents are not able to fathom why the child incessantly cries, because that sets up a tone of anxiety in the children. So for a long time, it was a hidden picture, even the child sexual abuse. It was not acknowledged in Indian legal system. In 2012, the Prevention of Child Sexual Offences POCSO Act defined and punished the offender where harassment, pornography, and rape were included, which itself is positive. But when I say it is positive, there is also a flip side to it. When we do report an incest, but the child, does it really have an alternate housing, an alternate system where the child is looked after, the interest of the child is upheld, the schooling of the child is looked after, or are we pushing into another den where we don't know what is happening? Because this is something that we have to be, because we make laws, but there aren't enough socially provided alternate rehab centers. And even if there are places where you can take them, women and child welfare hostels or something, but it's not same as giving them a home away from home atmosphere. So survey on demographic and health by United Nations International Children Education Fund in India says 10 in 2013. The study was from 2005 to 2013. 10% of girls might have experienced sexual violence when they were 10 to 14 years age, and about 30% during 15 to 19 years of age. So overall, nearly 42% of Indian girls have gone through the sexual violence before they reach the age of 20. Even if you look back at the horrific experiences of being either in a train or in a public space where you're literally running to catch a train or a bus or something, most of us can also look back and think how we were badly abused in the crowd. According to Carson et al., excluding children aged 1 to 5 years of age, 1/5 to half of country's population might have faced some form of sexual abuse at least once in their life. So what is being reported is only a tip of the iceberg. So especially during the pandemic, with schools opting for online classes, 60% of the online users were children. The new threat of safety for the children. And it did emerge, and many of them were not aware what had to be done. During the use of online platform, children were without parental supervision, making children vulnerable to online sexual abuse. According to National Crime Records Bureau, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in USA, at least 25,000 images of sexual abuse were uploaded across social media between September 2019 to Jan 2020. It happened just in the room, in the bedroom, when children were sitting, talking, but some were not aware, some thought this is the routine, and some did not care. So, violence against children, again, harsh reality for millions of children from all socioeconomic groups. In India, early marriage, domestic abuse, sexual violence, violence at home and in school, trafficking, online violence. In fact, it's more like a terrorist activity online. Literally scaring a child, putting the parents into danger, and informing them, because getting the history from the child and in turn telling them, I know your father, he is this, he is that, I can kill him, and things like that. So child labor, cyberbullying, all these forms of violence and abuse and exploitation have a lifelong consequence on the children's lives. They would suffer from a post-traumatic stress even at a later stage. So especially when you have children, and moreover, the issue of child sexual abuse is still a taboo. Many mothers don't even want to hear of it. In fact, when I have examined a child under the POCSO, this child was 7 years, and she was already abused, and they changed the place to come to Mangalore. But somewhere I have a feeling that the news travels even before she reached here, because from the second or third week, she was again being abused. We only got to know because she had a severe symptoms of urinary tract infection and nothing else. But yet, it was in one of the very prolonged history which lasted for 2.5 hours, with at least 3 or 4 breaks in between, water break, a break for a juice and biscuit, that the history came out that she was being abused. And the entire history which came out, it made us feel like fools. Why didn't we think of it before? But the mothers did not want to make a noise about it because she was not economically independent. She was staying in her sister's house. Sister had a large family, sister's children, sister's husband, lot of people were using the child. And the child was also being sent out to play with somebody, and she was being taken in the car. So many times the parents do not want to hear about it because they do not have any other option to go. The mother frankly told me, if she puts me out of the house, I'm on the road, and all of us will get exploited. So sometimes this is the stark reality of life, because I really wished there was a place where the girl could go to a safe house where she was being taken care of. But when we called the people in charge who came in, they said, no, 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 she's better off at home. So this makes us think, what do we have in place for them? There are other flaws in our social system as well. Most medical professions aren't equipped with skills to examine sexual abuse in children. They may not even take the history. They may not even have a rapport building with the child. In fact, what clicked with this particular child was just one single question after second or third day, that if you are in danger, who do you call? The girl said, my grandmother. And when did you last call her? She said, I think 1 year back. and what had happened. So she said that old man was troubling me, so I told. That is how the entire history came. But it is a huge, tall order, and one has to pay attention and enough time and have this at the back of your mind that we should rule out child sexual abuse. So, and in the boys, it is still neglected topic. Most of them do not even ask the child abuse because the child is not doing well in school. Suddenly grades falling, I would have my own doubts that somebody is threatening the child, somebody is coercing the child, child's emotional stability is lost. So that is how it again depends on, if you don't build a rapport of trust with the child, it's difficult. If you have parents watching and parents are not talking about it, it's difficult to ask your child because the child looks at the parents to speak or not to speak. So which are the laws that protect children? The core child protection for children is enshrined in 4 main laws: the Juvenile Justice, and then the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012, that's a POXO, which is supposed to be good. In fact, when we fill out the form, we literally feel very positive. But then I didn't even get to called in the court to give evidence. Later on, I heard that case is finished. So, I mean, there are aspects to it, but when it comes to human angle of carrying it out, it is our moral leadership that counts. And we, I think, as Indians, we would rather show our religion, our belief on our shoulder. We wear it, our religion on our shoulder, but morality we think is only religion. It is not a moral leadership that we have to take a tough choice. So, protection of children and also child labor. So what the POXO Act has certain advantages. Because initially, before the POXO Act came in, the child sexual abuse was treated at par with adult sexual abuse. It was difficult for a child to give evidence. And no additional safety net for the children. And there was no definition of acts covered under the Act. If it was a digital manipulation with fingers or any other thing, it did not get counted as a rape, because penetration by definition was the only thing where it was counted as rape. So it was subject to evidence at a level where child could not stand trial. Children buckled, and later on the child was blamed for it's being tutored by somebody for the advantage it seeks. So whereas the POXO, the advantages today are through this act, sexual assault, sexual harassment, pornography are also covered. Even digital manipulation of a child besides sexual intercourse is also covered. So to safeguard the best interest of the child, proper protection of the child, which protects privacy, confidentiality, and it is gender neutral. It even covers the boys. It covers any child for that matter, male, female, or transgender. So when we report it, it gets reported first to the SJPU, Special Juvenile Police Unit, and the SJPU makes necessary arrangement for the child care, and they inform the Child Welfare Department, who will admit the child to shelter home. Now, what is required at this place is a check on the Child Welfare Departments, arbitrary check without prior notice. How many children, what is happening, history taking from the children, what are they getting to eat, what are they learning, where are they going, and how many days do they stay there, what are the other mechanisms in place. So no punishment for reporting. So challenges, punishments, stringent may be a deterrent for reporting. So initially, yeah, somebody has raised a hand. I think I'll finish, and can I take it? Seema Malhotra, I'll come to you once I finish. So below 18 years, are the slides moving or no? I'm in the challenges.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Below
We are
18
in
years.
next.
Yeah. So I'll come back to questions as soon as I finished with this, because it will have a continuity in my presentation. So even below 18 years, sexual explorations can be called rape and boy may be punished. Now, this is the fallout of the POXO Act. If the girl is below 18, and even if it's a consensual sexual intercourse, many a times it gets reported as rape. And the judicial age for majority may not account for emotional growth of a child. A child may emotionally grow at 17, commit herself to a boy in 17, but the boy will be guilty of rape with when they bring for examination, because for us it's mandatory to report to the police. But this is where I think we also need to use our moral leadership. So this is the mandatory reporting. It puts legal duty on the person who has seen or examined to report to the police. So failing to report will attract imprisonment or fine. in-camera trial of the case is done. In-camera is in the judge's chamber. It is not with media glare and photographs, but it can be done so that the child's privacy is also upheld. Examination of the child in the presence of parents or a woman doctor is also done. So this is the requirement initially was to take the child to the police station, but now it is not required to take the child to police station, and police are not coming with their full the cap and the uniform, but they can come in the plain clothes. So they record it in the language in which the child is conversant, and especially when we take histories, we give lot of breaks to children. We do not want them to feel stressed. We do not want them to feel, I don't know what happened. And so it's the kind of a small few questions, then they take a break, then they come back, then, oh, talking from this happened, then what happened, then we take it on from there. So there have been initiatives of the government. So I think I just will show this slide and move on. And again, focusing back to child marriage. In pandemic again, because of the one mouth less to feed, there were a haste to get the girls married. There were also pregnancies, unwanted pregnancies. Abortion services did not come immediately. It was off for some days. Later on, after 3 months, abortion services were given, but the public transport was not there. So as a result, many did not access it. They had to go ahead marrying the person with a huge age difference, or it does result in child marriage and the children becoming mothers. And there are 24 million child brides in India. The persistence of child marriage remains a potential deterrent because we cannot, in all possibilities, attain Sustainable Development Goal 5, that is education and livelihood for children by 2030, because one girl getting pregnant would mean she does not go ahead with the education. So if she doesn't finish with education, she has got very few avenues open for economic flourishing. So India has articulated commitment to eliminating child marriages through numerous policies. But again, the culture is such. We still feel that a child who's married is safer than child who is in a house. So children who have faced sexual abuses experience serious long-term effects, and also the short and long-term effects, which include low self-esteem, facing excessive guilt, shame, blame. This also because of once again, I come to the harping on patriarchal nature of society, where we make a victim doubly victimized. First, she has gone through the being a survivor of the sexual assault. Then we hammer it to her that it was you who was responsible. You shouldn't have dressed like this. You shouldn't have gone out like this. You keep giving smiles. You should keep a very serious face. You have entertained the sexual assault. So that's one of the reasons why, as a society, we should stand in solidarity and support than pointing fingers at her. Apart from this, survivors of child sexual abuse may face mental health issues, post-traumatic stress disorders, depression, substance abuse, helplessness, negative attribution, and an aggressive behavior, a conduct problem. They're not able sometimes to make a meaningful attachment because there's a problem with the attachment theory. When a child who is developing attachment to parents suddenly finds parents are not responding, and the care is taken over by somebody else, and they are giving a deadpan expression, child is literally having neglect. And when it gets some attention in the form of a sexual advancement, child sometimes does not even know that this is different from the affection. So that is how, and once they go through the sexual assault or such a behavior, then they have a problem attaching themselves to anybody. It causes a attachment theory, a problem. So also eating disorders and anxiety. Recent studies have also shown that there is a correlation between child sexual abuse and psychotic disorders, because they have to be given specially care, counseling, and they require a care that is more sustained. It's not once in a month I've seen and then you can do whatever you want to, you're free, because the symptoms appear sometimes at times like nightmares. So that is why it requires a little longer period till the child is adjusted. So what happens now with the long way to, especially in developing support structures? We have a long way to go. We are not ready yet. We have laws in place, but the laws themselves don't meaningfully feed into social welfare unless people who are there believe and make out say what is the gap there and to work for it. So family fearing stigmatization, so reporting doesn't happen. Only 3% report to police. Community, it's a blame game. Community, dress, attire, conspiracy, and the girl did this and did that. And society, to develop support mechanisms, we have to also have a compassion. And lack of age certificate in some cases, making the age estimation by forensic doctors pivotal to the case. But again, when we give, it is not in exactitude, it is in range. So there's a lot of things. One sec. I think it's hanging up. So, challenges. We have a lot of challenges with implementation because proactiveness of forensic people is not encouraged in court. If I try to guide somebody in some other mortuary about some examination, and if my name comes up, the court would like to know, how am I interested in that case? Am I doing it as a favor? So we have to, especially when you look at histories, we don't, as forensic doctors, have a complete view of what context of the death. We only give cause of death. We don't give whether it's homicide, suicide, accidental. We wait for police to bring in the information. We don't go to the crime scene. In other countries, the crime scene visit is a must, forensic. But in India, in some of the countries like UK also, we only give cause of death. We don't give the context around the death. So even when they say victim died due to kerosene stove burst, many a times when we go there, there is no stove. Many a time police don't go many times. They just take what is history given to them. So this is where we lose a lot of evidence. We're working in silos. Doctors, as a forensic doctors, police, the investigative agent, they're all in silos. We don't interact with each other for one justice for the patient. So now, this is another alarming figure we need to look at: premature closure of cases. Nearly 750,000 cases are closed every year due to lack of evidence. These cases were deemed true. That means it has happened. It's a fact, but insufficient evidence. Who's responsible for evidence? So then nearly 1 in 6 cases are disposed due to lack of evidence. 1 in 9 cases are disposed of due to lack of evidence and are against, especially they are at a higher level of gravity, like murder, kidnapping, rape. Non-recording of FIR if the accused is influential. We are aware of the cases where they would not even want to register a case. And when the girl was comatose, she was in hospital. When she came back to consciousness and she says, I was raped, they said she took 6 days to report. So probably it is not true. Somebody has told her to report it. And ultimately, the girl died due to strangulation mark. And in the midnight, they did even the cremation. The parents did not even get to see the dead body. So, lack of training in collecting, preserving, and producing evidence in the court, vacant posts of investigators, police, etc. So many of them are lying vacant, they're not filled. Investigative law and order functions are not being separate because when I look at France, I like at the medical legal systems. The police who are doing the investigative work are not the same one who are running behind ministers when they come. So there is a difference, investigative and the executive. But here it doesn't happen. So even if it's a most important case, most crucial case, the moment a VIP, VVIP comes, they leave the case and run behind them. So not having a manner of death, because manner of death is giving suicidal, homicidal, accidental. So this inputs to us are given by the police. But we are not directly responsible for it. We don't collect this as is required in some countries like in US, because when 9/11, when 911 telephone goes in, it's also the police, it's also the emergency people who go there to the crime scene, including crime scene officials. So then there is no loss of evidence. So in India, there's a cause of death in medical legal cases. Otherwise, it is assumed that the manner of death is to be established by IO, who is the police. So expecting them to complete and then complete the jigsaw puzzle may not be a right system. So police are not trained in gender sensitivity. They have, in fact, we had recorded once 20, 25 years back, when we went to police station to register a case, what choicest abuses heaped on the people. We had recorded it and we had shown it to others. And is this what it is? And the women police stations were no better. They also did the same. But I cannot say that now they're doing the same. There's a huge change. And I have myself seen that there is a change that's happening. But I'm just trying to bring to you that in some stations it could still be happening. Challenges in implementing laws, inadequate human resource capacity, and lacuna in quality prevention and rehabilitation services, and child marriage prevalence and cultural acceptability. This again becomes deterrent. So with this, I finish my presentation. This is for further reading, and thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Your expertise and perspective have added tremendous value to our collective understanding of this crucial issue. The floor is now open for questions. You can either raise your hand on Zoom or type in your question in the Q&A box.
Ma'am, it's a wonderful presentation, so insightful, and
Thank
I
you.
really have got a lot of insight from it. And
Thank you,
being a
Shalu.
lawyer, I just want to, raise this issue, since you have already raised this issue, that, forensic plays a very important role in, establishing the crime. And we know that in a lot of violence against women cases, the conviction rate is low because of, the cases are being closed because of lack of evidence or police investigation or other things. And women's movement has been fighting over the years for again with the police that you do the proper investigation. But still, the fight is,
Yeah.
I think, very long. But as a lawyer, or what should we do to really improve the system so that at least conviction, because the women face a lot of problem in accessing justice. Even if we talk about the middle class women, or the women who have resources, so even for them access to justice is not easy. So what should we do to really to at least the justice could be served?
Actually, I'll just tell you what happened in Belgaum some years back. We had an NGO. My friend was a lawyer, and I was giving the forensic, and I used to do the counseling for domestic violence, sexual assault, including for the family members. And then there was once a commercial sex worker who was very sweet looking, nice lady. She was picked up from the when she had gone for shopping by the police, taken to police station, sexually assaulted in the police station. And so then they were not registering a complaint. So that was the time when we went to the DC to register a complaint, to tell him that it was not being registered. And actually, because I was already in a job, and in some of the places, you're not supposed to make a demonstration, or you're not supposed to do this because you have to take a permission, and there's no time to take permission in such cases. So then I had also gone with my face covered and all. But at the same time, we got all the commercial sex workers to come together and fight for on behalf of this lady. But then police said, let them come, we will catch each of them for soliciting sex, and sometime or the other we'll put them in police station. That was the time I remember calling Meena Sheshu from Sangli, and she had sent a truckload of people. And we mounted so much pressure till they registered a case. And then later on, of course, they suspended him for only 3 months. Don't know what happened after that. I left Belgaum that time. But it does happen that sometimes it is a tug of war between them and us. It just requires a bit more of sustenance and solidarity. And these days, things are much easier because we can draw the media attention. So we are there. If they are able to help us in a proactive way, it would be very useful. But I'm aware of a kind of insensitivity people show when you register the cases. Similarly, even there was this 12-year-old girl when I was in Goa. She was assaulted on the beach, sexually assaulted. And when she came for examination, I was sitting there and I was telling, I'm going to examine her immediately. So the police were telling, don't be in a hurry. There's no hurry. You can take your own time. I was shocked. I said, no, I'm going to examine her. Then they said, do you think she's been raped? Look at her. She's smiling, sitting, doing nothing. I don't think she's raped. You don't believe her. So my question is, we are people of science. One, doesn't mean that we should be non-compassionate to anyone. Second, when we are examining, if I examine with that attitude that we cannot believe her, she can suddenly tune off. She knows she will not even narrate her history. She will give up the battle at the history stage, even before giving the complete history. So it has happened at times when my colleagues say, how come she didn't talk to us? She talked to you. Maybe because you're a lady, they're telling you. But I think it's more of a language of compassion even animals understand. So we should be able to get to that level of communication. So that is one thing, to develop a rapport. And so that we are able to get that, then they will tell us the history. And if we are able to sustain together in a solidarity, we are able to get some things done. But if the Sehat had made a great initiative of making a sexual assault forensic evidence kit. I was also one of the person who they contacted, and we used to attend all the meetings as a consultant. And later on, there are a lot of things, because right now I would say if a sexual assault case comes in a larger centers, it will be thoroughly examined. Now, the flip side of forensic medicine is that a person, as soon as he finishes, he can become a medical officer. And now forensic then is no more a specialist topic, but it's a generalist topic. So if they're not trained specially to pick up these, if they're not, and especially in some PHCs, people use such age-old certificates to look at and copy. In fact, when we were postgraduates, there were only three things. A person is used to sexual intercourse, person is not used to sexual intercourse and does not had a sexual intercourse recently, and then third one, it was a person who has experienced sexual intercourse but not sexually assaulted. But my question was, why does sexual intercourse come into picture? It should not be a part of our this thing. But that is how for a long time, because when I joined forensic in 1993, I was the first lady in the Karnataka state. And I used to find this kind of behavior by people that the entire forensic meant only sexual assault rape examination. But there are n number of things, identification, unidentified body, this. So there was a kind of everybody wanting to present that, but nobody had a bigger picture of how the rape crisis center should be and how should, at that level, they were not interested. Only examination, taking pictures, giving the evidence. So somewhere I think things have changed. But if I look at it from the gender perspective, there's a lot that needs to go in, because we need to unpack not just the examination, but how crucial everything that I say and write is in deciding for the case. If I don't look at it that way, if I detach myself and say, write something and write, okay, findings not suggestive of sexual assault, naturally they will think sexual assault has not happened. So this is something that we have to be careful. The language itself can be a barrier at times.
Yes, ma'am. I was reading some of the papers, and which says that the books which are written for the courses of in medical colleges and all, they are also very sometimes very they have that kind of misogynist material, and which you really don't, because two fingers test was was mentioned in some of the textbooks.
It was almost like a canonical, it was, everybody had to believe and do it and then talk about it. The Modi's textbook, which everybody referred to, over referred, he had made a statement that nobody can rape a lady against her will. And that was so unjust, so unjust. Once I've talked about judges not being up to date with science. They sit with their age-old things. Updation doesn't take place. To some extent, police undergo some training. These days, there are police academies. They have a forensic training. But when you give evidence, you face the same thing. You find that their age-old thing. In fact, when I used to give evidence, I used to feel personally insulted the way they used to ask me questions. Because the moment it's a lady, they would think, oh, she may not know much. What is her experience? What is she talking? When I told them that a guy had a blood alcohol of 300 mg%, he had had a mild injury, but he died. So in alcoholics, even a mild injury can, then he told me, oh, you mean to say alcoholics die? Then all India would be dead. I mean, it's shocking, actually. I thought as a judge, you can laugh. but actually I feel like laughing at your knowledge. So this is something that there's a huge gap in their understanding. But I'm also aware of a particular judge who used to call me before he gave an punishment. He said, this was what was given, this was what was recorded. Then lastly, I want you to take a look. And he made it a point to invite me with my husband because he didn't want me to go alone in his office. And he used to give me photographs, this, that, and take an expert opinion. This is okay, this is okay. He was cautious. So that is why a professionalism is something that we must encourage in every field. And integrity is something we should stand for, because what we often feel that easily our biases win over, our influences by higher authorities win over. But then what are we going to do with justice? Because that is one commodity we have, which we must reach it to the persons who need it. So we are not doing then something good in our profession. But it does happen. We have seen many times justice being hijacked for some other causes. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Any other questions from the floor? Please raise your hand, or you can type in the question and answer box.
Can I speak?
Yeah, sure.
Seema, I just wanted to point out few things because I have worked mostly in Tihar jail and I have actually worked with the kids. Kids, I would say, because, as you mentioned, the consensual sex. And this boy who was my good worker, because we were producing jute bags and all in my NGO. And I said, ki bache, ab itte talented ho, what happened? He said, ma'am, kuch nahi kiya tha, but ab bahar jaake karunga. I said, क्या करोगे? कहता murder, क्योंकि मैं murder case में ही आया हूँ. So he had an affair with a girl and the girl was forced. And he just didn't come back from a parole. When you get that, he just didn't come back. And he was a great guy, very talented, very creative. And so many kids, so many boyfriends, I would call 40% of boyfriends who are rapists in the jail. I don't know the real figure now, but the percentage of boyfriends who are being called rapists. So just wanted to point out. And one policeman, like you said, some judge said, can a woman be raped? And this man is sitting, I can't see who was that person, but he is sitting in front of me, points on his thighs. He said, ma'am, do you think any man can rape? I didn't know where to look and I stopped going to that officer. He said, ma'am, हो ही नहीं सकता बिना lady के agree होने में. And Professor Vaswani, my God, I admire you. I love you for your presentation and your commitment and your, that thing which was there in me, but I lost out because it was a burnout. So my question, though I have so many things written down, but I want to know, I hope you're looking after yourself and there won't be any burnout. Like yesterday we spoke, I think last week or something, with our age, we had a burnout and still didn't recover. Because every day, and one Bobby guy, if you remember, that Lal Kuan guy of Delhi University, Shalu ji, if you remember that case of medical hospital student. And I spoke to that rapist, ki, aapko hua kya? Before I had a talk to give in a college. He said, kuch nahi ma'am, dekha, kar diya rape. My God, I said, Baba Ray, like, that girl, where is she now? But really sad. And that's what I want to ask Professor Vaswani. How do you recover from all this? And you're dealing with this every day.
Yeah. Actually, even when I took up this, my grandmother used to tell me that you're only dealing with dead. I said, no, we are dealing with a huge number of people who we can help. At the end of the day, we do feel that to some people we have helped. Some, it's an impossible case. But at the same time, I think I have a very broader understanding that success is not the output we are looking at. Being humane, trying to give some helping hand to whatever extent possible. Because sometimes I did have nightmares about mothers who were weeping when they lost their only child, falling in a cesspool or whatever, in a huge housewarming ceremony. So that it haunted me for a long time, because that child exactly looked like my child. And if I were to look at the child, I would think that's my child on the autopsy table. And I was to do the autopsy. So many a times, yes, you rightly pointed out that it does cause a burnout. But one thing I feel is whenever we have here to do a duty, let's do it to the best. Let us improve a little better than last year. Let's put in more heart and do it. And I do meditate quite a lot. So it helps me a lot to think that some things require to be changed, but some things we cannot change. But as a wise person, we should know the difference. And we should think that it's not for me, I could not do it. But whenever I can, I will do it. So I know my limitations very well and I've accepted them.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for being with us here today and patiently answering all our questions. We look forward to seeing you in all our future IMPRI events as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is not the presentation, but it is the questions, discussions by all of you when you put, especially when Dr. Shalu also asked. And I think, was that Seema who was asking the last question? Discussion? And
Yes.
so it literally, you start reflecting. And reflection now takes me to another journey for my next presentation. So it becomes better at incorporating those things. So I thank each and every one of you and the IMPRI as well for such a wonderful, what you call a plethora of a galaxy of people talking about a huge discussion on a different canvas to paint. I'm sure the participants must count themselves lucky because they have a lot of take home from here. So thank you so much.
Can I share something else?
Sure, please.
So 2012, for you, she was Nirbhaya, but for me, she was a girl. I used to attend meeting with Asha ji, her mother. And these boys were in jail number 4, Ram Singh, the guy who was supposed, allegedly did, hanged himself. And that was the downfall where I started. I needed a psychologist and a psychiatrist to get out, because years on till 2014-15, my whole body would react when I heard that name, and Jyoti and all that. So it was very traumatic for me. And then Kathua case 2015, I recovered, and one night I
I
became.
was literally bad with that. I took a lot of time with Kathua case because I was thinking, what are we doing as a country?
Yeah.
Go on.
What happened in 2000, that Kathua case, that whole one night, I was raped myself, it felt. So I realized I go through them. I become the child. I became Nirbhaya. I became the Kathua girl. And that day I decided, no, Seema, you only will do awareness. That's what you can do. So I go to 2+ kid, 20+ kid, and 40+ men, do whatever training awareness I could, as you said, do what you can do. And I would remember that again.
Yeah, true.
But Kathua case, I became that 8-year-old child and I couldn't get out of it. So
No, it was
thank you.
Kathua, it was Hathras, those one after
Every
the
day is
other.
another case.
So it was kind of, for me, you couldn't see hope anywhere.
Yeah.
Then I just thought maybe we'll just step back and for some time, not only concentrate on these things, look at some success stories that are happening, but I literally lived the Hathras and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I talk about dignity, I talk of dignity to dead bodies. And then I see here's a person who's going to die, but ripped of dignity. After death, ripped of dignity. I mean, this is something that really hurt me very deep. Yeah. I totally agree. So then we should think for some days we need a change of scene, whatever we enjoy doing to whatever level possible we should do, but we should not have very ambitious way of again going the same way. I think because we also need to heal. Healing is a very important aspect of emotional total fatigue. And because that itself causes post-traumatic stress. So yeah.
Right. So moving back, I know lots of youngsters are there, especially Yashika and other girls, Ria. So sorry, I'm just talking too much, but please look after yourself. Meditation, yoga, changing,
Yes.
diversion.
Yeah.
Change your line of thoughts till you recover. And please, first thing is you yourself to look after and then help others. Put oxygen mask on yourself first.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
much.
Actually, these are golden words. You can write it down because we should know our limitations. Secondly, more the negativity is coming towards you, you need to have the gumption to say, I'm going to stay away from it. I'm going to steer in another direction. Because the more you get into it, it's like wallowing in self-pity, wallowing in kind of a sorrow. So one should be able to say, like a jacket, I'm throwing it away, I'm going somewhere, I'm changing a seat. and then come back and reach to any other job that you feel you like to take. It could be totally different. Even selling, for that matter, having a small greeting card shop and talking to people in hi, how are you, and make a new identity. It's okay. But we all need to know that we have limitations, and we should be the one to see it within us. And I think very nicely, as Miss Seema brought it up. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Okay. So following two remarkable sessions by Miss Anju Dubey ji and Professor Vina Vaswani ji, we are now heading to our final session of the day, a legal hands-on session led by Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam ji, visiting senior fellow at IMPRI and distinguished advocate, author, and researcher in gender and human rights. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and it was so wonderful presentations we have just now. So maybe just that will help me to really elaborate on my presentation too. So today I'll just start talking about the dowry law. Yeah. So I'll talk about dowry violence and the legal reform over the decades in India, and why the laws have failed to bring any change. We know that dowry is age-old issue, but why we are talking it about now? And while examining the case laws and incidents reported by media, I'll try to show that how the incidents of dowry violence have increased in number over years. The scope has enlarged, and the outreach is also increasing, while at the same time we are trivializing and normalizing the violence. So I just wrote this book a few days back, and nobody, no publisher was ready to publish this book, saying that it's an age-old issue, nobody will buy this book. But I say that no, dowry is something which we really it's not ended. We need to do much more work in that area. But I'll just start with this poem, and this poem was rejecting Sita, India response to idle men's cruel treatment. And the poem says that they say Sita the chaste emerged from fire, radiant and beautiful. There was Sita I knew, chaste enough till yesterday, a foul charred corpse today. This kerosene and matches test is something that Sitas of today invariably fail. And this is the case which has been reported last December, in which a doctor, 26-year-old doctor, she committed suicide, in Kerala, because her boyfriend refused to marry her, and the family demand, a lot of things. They want gold, land, and BMW car in dowry, and therefore she has to commit suicide. And in her suicide note, she wrote, everyone wants money only. And such a tragic incident. This is another incident which took place near Jaipur, where the family of the three women who young women who were married to within the same family, the three sisters, and they committed suicide by jumping in the well along with their two children. And in the WhatsApp message to one of the relatives, they wrote, "It's better to die once and for all than die every day. We don't want to die, but death is more merciful than their abuse. Our in-laws are the reasons for our death." And these are the recent cases you may see somewhere in the newspaper in some corner about how dowry is killing women and children, but the way we are treating this issue. So I'll just skip these slides. But there are some positive news also, which is coming. Like one of the news, it says that my dad saved for my education instead of dowry, and he stood by me and changed my life. So this girl, she invested the entire money her dad saved for her dowry to start a school. So another thing is that some of the government, like Kerala government, is considering to make changes in the Dowry Act. So what I just want to say is that during the Holocaust, we knew that 6 million Jews were murdered. But if we talk about, I'm not comparing one tragedy with another tragedy, but if we talk about India, Professor Sen, he has talked about missing women, and it is being reported that 37 million women died because they are discriminated against from womb to tomb, which causes their death. And this include, within the homes, not only female feticide or infanticide, but also dowry violence. Another study in 2008, it reported that 44 million women are missing because of gender bias, neglect of girls, infanticide and feticide, and also dowry. So these million girls and women are being murdered day in and day out within the spaces called home. And we are just trivializing these kind of violence. Now, Judith Butler, she has in her research, she described some lives as unrelievable, which cannot be mourned for because they never lived and remained uncounted. So perhaps these women who are dying due to dowry violence in homes are such uncounted lives, the lives that no one wants to protect, no one wants to mourn, and no one wants to remember. Now, we all know yesterday I spoke about Dowry Prohibition Act. The Dowry Prohibition Act says that made in 1961, it defined dowry as demand for property or valuable security, which it's in a consideration of marriage, and it's basically from the side of bride parents to the relatives of the groom or his parents. So the courts in various decisions, they have elaborated the definition of dowry, and they say it can be even in connection of marriage and need not be in consideration of marriage. Dowry Prohibition Act, Section 3, it says that giving and taking dowry both are offense, and the penalty for giving and taking dowry is imprisonment for not less than 5 years and a fine of 15,000 rupees. Penalty for demanding dowry is that punishment for 6 months imprisonment to 2 years and fine of 10,000 rupees. The law also ban advertisements relating to dowry, and the courts can take cognizance in such cases. And as per the rules which were amended in 1985, both the brides and the groom sides, they are required to keep the list of presents given to them, which should contain a brief description of items, its value, the person who has given the gift, and the list should be signed by both bride and groom. Yesterday, we also talked about Section 304B about dowry death. So I'll not go into details, but basically, it says that under normal circumstances, if a woman dies within the 7 years of her marriage, and it is shown that soon before her death, she was subjected to cruelty or harassment by her husband or any relative of his, and this is in connection with any demand for dowry, such death will be called as dowry death. And it will be presumed that the husband or his relatives, they have deemed to cause her death. So in several cases, the courts have laid down guideline. They say that there should be a demand, there should be relating to dowry, the harassment should be done by the accused, and the deceased must have died to constitute an offense under Section 304B, and the death is under unnatural circumstances. So that is the things that we have to prove, the prosecution has to prove within the courts. So what are the procedures prescribed for filing the case of dowry? So dowry is punishable. So victim has to, the family of the victim, they have to file FIR in the local police station, and the police will prepare a charge sheet, and then a criminal case will be filed, and the police can, if the survivor is alive, the police can ask her to really go to the women's cell. And yesterday we spoke about cells and counseling and everything. So, those counseling could be done. And right now the trend is that if someone has to file the maintenance case or the dowry case, you have to give the details of the gifts being given at the time of marriage and the income and assets of both the parties. The law appoints dowry prohibition officers. It says that the state should, appoint dowry prohibition officers to ensure that Their role is to stop the transaction and collect evidence to make case strong enough necessary for prosecution. But in terms of appointment, we have seen that these officers are not being appointed. Sometimes they exist only on papers, and sometimes they are not even aware of their duties, which they are supposed to carry as dowry prohibition officers. So the fact is that the conviction rate is very low because, again, crime cannot be proven due to lack of evidence because it is being committed within the privacy of the home. There are no witnesses, or witnesses they are they are afraid to speak. So basically, the crime could not be easily proved. So in 2019, in a petition filed before the Delhi High Court, the petition has raised this issue that the Delhi government should appoint proper dowry prohibition officers, and the bench of then Chief Justice D.N. Patel and Justice Harishankar, they directed the government to provide the training to dowry prohibition officers and ensure that they perform their duties effectively. The court also directed the government to prepare the necessary literature in the form of pamphlets and booklets and other kind of things. So basically, it shows that how the law is not working, even if we have provisions there, written it down in the law. Again, on 20th December 2021, a petition again filed, a public interest litigation being filed before the Supreme Court, and the petition says that dowry law should be strengthened and the law commission should look into amending the law. The petitioner, they say that dowry prohibition officers should be appointed in every district, and they should be given powers which is equivalent to right to information, the officers appointed under the RTI Act. And they say that the gift women should given to the woman should be registered in her name till 7 years after the wedding. No dowry certificates to be mandated for marriage registration and for government employment for availing schemes. Like, if I have applying for the government job, I should say give a no dowry certificate, that I'll not take dowry, and neither have taken the dowry. So a compulsory pre-marriage counseling for couples to create awareness about dowry. So the court has criticized the practice of dowry, but it says that the law commission should look into all these suggestions. Kerala government is amending the rules, and they say that training of district officers and voluntary organizations should be there, and steps are taken up to set up the district advisory boards and intensifying the awareness program. And the state police has also started the campaign which says, like, say no to dowry. So and even in the textbook, they are revising the school textbooks, and to remove the phrases and words that are harmful for women, and replacing it with the words that are which enable the culture of gender equality. So these kind of changes are being made. But when I look at the while doing my research, I look at this definition of marriage and wedding. So nowhere it says that it is linked to giving or taking of money. So basically, marriage, it says that it should be a legally recognized companionship between two consenting adults, and wedding is defined as marriage ceremony, usually with its accompanying festivities. So nowhere payment is nowhere it's being defined, but basically parents may be giving financial support to the newly wed couple, and therefore they have started this custom. So basically, if you see, initially there was a custom of bride price, where the money is being given by the groom to the family of bride, because it is assumed that they are taking an asset who is working. Like, women used to work earlier, daughters used to work earlier in the field and help in the household. So basically, the man is taking this woman. So the asset is moving out. So he's paying some money to the parents of the bride. So it's called bride price. But now slowly this practice has now it's the other way around. And now it's more of demand and coercion and exploitation which is going around. So, but the online dating apps and matrimony business is growing annually, and the report says that it is now 1,500 crores of business with annual growth rate at 65%. And marriage market could be, it's growing, and with a man with an MBA degree can command dowry from 6 to 60 lakhs, and an IAS officer can demand 50 lakhs. And this this rates go up if the groom is settled abroad. So basically, it is estimated that the wedding cost is around 5 lakhs to 5 crores, and a person spend 1/5 of their accumulated wealth in a lifetime on this particular occasion. So the marriage market is booming and flourishing business, and where commercialization, pleasure, morality, and imagination, everything is being being exploited by the market forces. A report by KPMG, it says that the wedding industry could be around $50 billion dollars of market. And during the pre-COVID period, it is estimated that the marriage industry was worth 100,000 crores, and it adds over 3 lakhs jobs a year during the season. Special malls are being created. In 2022, it is estimated that wedding industry will grow by 200%. So, the wedding industry is growing. And what is happening is this Sridhan, we were talking yesterday. So Sridhan is right now, earlier, if I'm my parents are giving me 5 lakhs, like they have earmarked 5 lakhs for my marriage. So maybe, that will 5 lakhs worth of, jewelry or something. But now much of money is being spent on wedding celebrations. So out of that 5 lakhs, so much money is gone. So my Sridhan is left very less, so that kind of things which are not being counted when we talk about Sridhan and dowry and other things. And basically, we are here, parents all over the world, they say that they're investing in children's education for getting gold medals. But here, we are parents are investing in gold jewelry. So the moment the child is born, the parents are earmarking, okay, that this will be her dowry. So that the gold prices are rising, and in 2015, India was the second biggest consumer of gold after China, buying almost 800 to 1,000 metric ton of gold, and out of which 50 to 60% were for the purpose of marriage. In 2019, Indian consumer purchased 700 metric tons of gold. So this gold consumption is growing in our country. And this is what it is causing is that high people are taking loan, and in extremely poor household, families are suffering. They're facing hardship because of economic constraints. The higher savings are primarily financed through increased parental labor supply, and a study report that more than 60% of Indian families turn to money lenders to borrow funds for wedding ceremonies. So indebtedness is very high, and there is the data by Rural Economic and Demographic Survey of 17,000 marriages, and it says that in public sector employment, under heavy pressure, people took loans against their provident and pension funds, or opt for voluntary retirement to obtain the money. And so their savings are being, social security provisions, they are all going into the wedding. So if some of the people may remember, in 1989, there was a case which was reported where a father sold his kidney in a hospital to deposit rupees 10,000 in the name of each of his 3 daughters. And even in 2014, similar cases were reported in Hazaribagh, where this woman, mother of 2, she has to donate her kidney to her drunken husband as a part of dowry deal, where her mother-in-law forced her to write a written undertaking that that she would stop asking for dowry in case she donated her kidney. So obviously the harassment did not end, and after 6 months she was set on fire. So these kind of cases are going on. But what is the role of the court? In 1984, Supreme Court, in one of the case, where the wife is being murdered by suffocation and oral administration of potassium cyanide, the Session Court and the Bombay High Court found him guilty, but the Supreme Court acquitted this man. And the judgment reads that Manjushri appears to be not only a highly sensitive woman who expected wholehearted love from her husband, but having been thoroughly disappointed, she may have chosen to end her life. So basically, again, the victim blaming kind of strategy is being laid down, and the evidence of violence and betrayal by her husband all were ignored. And this case became a focal point for feminist group in Mumbai, and they led a poster including an exhibition titled "Make Manjushri" and the signature campaign and all. But even till now, this attitude is going on. So Supreme Court in several cases, what they are doing is they're reading more technicalities into the law. So in one case where a woman died because and the post-mortem report shows that the cause of her death was insecticide poisoning, but the Supreme Court says that the demand was made for urgent domestic expenses, and that cannot be termed as dowry demand. So similarly, there are cases after cases where women have died, because dowry demand were not met. But the court says that since the husband want to purchase a computer to establish a business, so therefore that couldn't be construed as a dowry demand. So I can go on cases after cases where the women have died, but the law is interpreted in a biased manner and technical manner, and no concern is or empathy is shown for a woman who lost her life. So basically, the courts have become blind to the situation and of powerlessness of the bride in the matrimonial home. So the scope and practice of dowry is being extensively widened, and now people are demanding cash or sponsoring the groom's higher education abroad, or including the cost of his migration, his business, his vehicle, house repairs, and domestic expenses. Additionally, enormous expenditures are being incurred in organizing big, fat, lavish wedding. We have seen recently last week, how this pre-wedding ceremony was organized and a lot of expenses were incurred. So basically, if this trend is being replicated down the line, so we can imagine the kind of consequences it will have. So basically, gruesome economic violence, extortion, blackmail, exploitation, all are happening in the name of dowry. So, but no actions are being taken at the ground level. So I'll just conclude, here, and will say that legal framework has ignored the essential element of how dowry is operating at the ground level. Women are facing problems such as coercion, extortion, blackmail, and exploitation within the relationship. So what could be the way forward? Again, the multi-pronged, comprehensive, survivor-centric strategies are needed to eliminate dowry violence. So we need to rethink about dowry laws. We have to talk about fixing the accountabilities of the of those who commit this act of violence. We have to devise strategies to rehabilitate and recompense the victims and survivors of violence. And a long-term strategy is required to alter the patriarchal structure, which is undermining women's worth. The United Nations women celebrate 16 days of activism. We have just heard in our first session. So similarly, I think this is one of my suggestions that we should, focus on dowry, and we should celebrate Dowry Elimination Day to raise awareness regarding, how dowry violence is affecting. So I'll just end with the slogan. This was slogan raised by the Indian women movement during the 70s and 80s. And it says, जो औरत को हक न दे सके वो समाज बदलना है. That means transform the society which cannot give women their due. This was true then, and this is true right now. So I'll just end here, and we can have a question and answer session. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
We sincerely thank you, ma'am, for an illuminating session, providing practical insights that will undoubtedly enhance our approach towards the subject matter. Now the floor is open for questions. You can either raise your hand on Zoom or type in your question in the Q&A box.
Can I have a question and a remark?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a wonderful presentation, Dr. Shalu, because it touched a chord in my heart as well. As a postgraduate, I wanted to do research on dowry death and the circumstances and the findings and in what way the justice is given. But I remember my boss telling me that don't bring all those ladies' things into picture. If you only want to study cause of death, then go ahead and do it. Then I said, no, I don't want to half-heartedly do anything. If I do it, I'll do a thorough study, but these are the components that have to go in it. Then he said, as a PG, you know nothing, but still, you seem to talk as though you know everything. I said, I know everything about a woman and what it once she goes through, then you could even imagine. Because being a male, you're not privy to that kind of thoughts. So now today I keep thinking, looking at the judges who think that the regular cruelty should not be considered cruelty, how would they even know what is cruelty? In Bangalore, way back in 86, there was a case where construction was being done and a lady who was helping, she was breastfeeding a child, 8 month child, and she had to go a long distance. But Saturday is a payment day. So after the payments were made, she lost her last bus to the village. So she went with truck driver, she got gang raped. And in the court, the judge said, no woman of virtue will go with truck drivers. So he would only imagine his wife, who would only have a chauffeur-driven car. So how would they? The lived experience is totally different from a construed experience of father-in-laws who become judges, who also pass snide remarks and they think that it's not cruelty. So I think it's a lot of understanding requires to be from the others as well when they look at cruelty, what is not cruelty, and a systematic cruelty over a period of time, then one insult is enough to make a person jump. So that kind of critical thinking we need to look at. So it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, in fact, yesterday we were having this discussion about having, telling the stories of the victims and survivors, because basically that space is somehow we have to occupy. We have to reclaim that space. Telling the stories so that even the judges and lawyers and everybody who's the policemen and so though they should be aware, of these kind of stories. So the judges who
Yeah,
is sitting there in some ivory tower shouldn't say that. Okay,
yeah, that is
this
true.
can't happen. So
Absolutely. Because I also wanted to ask one more thing. I was thoroughly confused when I visit the prisons. Because I used to visit when in 92 to 97 in Belgaum. And then I used to meet the ladies who were very, very suave family, good looking and things. They said for dowry they were pushed into. And they did not perform that. And then the girls who were kind of they're out there because they try to hit mother-in-law, father-in-law, or somebody. So sometimes I keep wondering that where do my sympathies lie? And because I'm against all mother-in-laws to begin with, because they have been so cruel, then we see some mother-in-laws who don't give that picture, but they got victimized. And sometimes we see the ladies who are supremely confident, but they were vulnerable, so they did something, so they are into it. So sometimes my husband used to say, you take up a stand once. Sometimes you say it's mother-in-law who's right. Sometimes I said, yeah, because I think every context goes on changing. It is sometimes difficult to fathom from us. But we see the same likes like my mother in the prison, and she's saying that no, my heart goes out. It was only a context. Somebody told her to make a strong case by putting these names, and she won the case. So sometimes it's a very confused way of looking, interpreting, and evaluating. That's what I felt.
Yes, ma'am. No, in fact, I truly understand because these kind of things are happening. But again, we have to go case by case basis. Looking into the context of every situation because there are lawyers in the courts and the judges who are just saying that just dismiss the case because all the cases are being filed false and something. So these kind of judgments are also coming, and I was wondering that we have to counter that kind of ideology which is dominated by that kind of patriarchal mindset that dismiss all the cases are false. So yesterday we had this discussion about false cases and how should we go about countering that. So maybe that the equation we have to understand, the judges don't understand that, that within the home the kind of dynamics which plays and the role of man in that kind of
Absolutely.
situation. So that is also important, but then again it's again we have to do a lot of things to sensitize the society.
We have to. In the first sexual assault it was a COD inquiry, one workshop I attended, where a forensic person of repute was telling, if a lady complains that she's been raped, don't believe her. So that was so shocking from then on to me, that why do you disbelieve a person? Why don't we say, get the facts, get the history, allow multiplicity of evidence, and then only on that you decide, than saying don't believe somebody. I said, but then do you say the same thing if somebody murdered some man comes and you say, okay, don't believe it? No, no, that we believe. I said, why? Because he's a male. So we have a lot of fabric of, we cannot know our own biases. I don't know if you followed the Project Innocence in US, that when they questioned all those who were in gallows, they were only American black men. And 186 convictions they overturned, because then they went to the depth of proof and there was no proof against them beyond reasonable doubt. But they were putting them to gallows. So one of our colleague, Itiol Dror, from social scientist Israel, he made a study. He gave a case scenario that a black man rapes a white lady, and all the same findings, is he guilty or not guilty? And these forensic guys, okay, including me, we are also guilty of the biases that we carry. Nearly 70% said black man is guilty. Now he changed the case. White man doing the same thing, same findings, every other finding. And then not even 20% said white man is guilty. So is it the color that decides who is guilty? So do we already make up our minds when we go into discussion? So even before you hear, you know what happened is from slum area. Oh, he's guilty. I know them. So actually, I think 12 Angry Men is the movie I show everybody to see how we start with a bias, but we should be open for understanding that we have bias, but we would like to know what is the truth. So that would be a nice thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, well, definitely. Any questions from the floor?
Yeah, I have a concern actually. I mean, we would talk about dowry, deaths and dowry when we were at school. So it was, kind of a compulsory essay which all of us had to write. Over years, since, these laws came in, now this whole discussion about dowry at school level has, actually been eliminated. So it's like, okay, the laws are there, so it has all stopped, whereas, it's like happening even now. So one of my students, a research scholar, she was to be married in this December. And September, she comes up and she tells me that her engagement has been broken because uh, the boy's family demanded something from the father. I don't know the details. And the father said, I mean, one word. And the father said that मुझे ऐसी family के साथ अपनी बच्ची को भेजना ही नहीं है. And he just put the phone down. So this was on the phone, and he didn't even consult the daughter, and he didn't ask anybody, but he just took this decision and he decided. Now, of course, the girl felt very bad, but she later on recovered, and she was fine and she was happy about her father's decision. What I'm trying to say is that it is happening even now, right? And we are under a cover that, okay, all these laws are now made, women have got their rights, so it doesn't function, it doesn't happen anymore. And this kind of a discussion which we were doing at school level is completely lost, now, and we are not even discussing these women issues at all. So it's like women will talk about their issues to women, and it's over. And somewhere I think there has to be a very, very aggressive, we have to go back to those years when we were talking about these things, and we have to bring it to public forum. So we're doing it at higher education level, but we are not actually doing it at, school level or secondary level. So, and the way we are doing it is also very, very like formality sake and all. Right. So I feel that, one larger problem is also of this acceptance that it is prevalent. So we are somewhere think we've decided, and particularly the privileged class has decided, that, okay, it was a thing of the past. दे रहे हैं तो अपनी बच्ची को ही दे रहे हैं. ठीक है, दे तो सकते ही हैं, एक गाड़ी तो पकड़ा ही सकते हैं. So हमारी बच्ची यूज करेगी. So this whole thing, I mean, it has been covered under these gifts that we give to our girls under the name of, and day by day it's increasing. It's also increasing in the kind of marriages which are happening, the destination weddings and the complete paraphernalia around marriages, the kind of gifts that are being given to the relatives and other places, other people in the families. So I feel, I mean, we also have to understand what are the different ways in which dowry functions. It's not just a demand, right? But what are the various other ways in which, people are giving dowries by covering it, under those beautiful gift wraps. So that's what I just wanted to add.
Yeah, no, you're very right. But the thing is that when I see the cases which are coming to the court, the women and the families which are coming to me, and there you see that the parents have spent a lot of money in wedding, and they said, yeah, okay, एक property ने मतलब नहीं दे रहे हैं, so at least we are giving some dowry to के justify कर लिया. But when it comes to the breakdown of marriage, what women get, at the time of divorce or separation. You see, the Sridhan is again the जो भी जेवर था, like jewelry is being given to the mother-in-law. The husband has taken it कि हम इसको save करके रखेंगे, So the women, when they come, they have nothing in their hands. So at that time I feel the kind of they should be having some kind of economic security. Our parents ने तो बोल दिया, okay, we have given dowry, so our job is over. Now the in-laws have taken all the jewelry and other valuable gifts. But अब इसके पास क्या बचा? What is she having? She's having nothing in her hand. So
And then another complication in such cases is that, parents of the girl don't allow her to get divorced because the case lingers on. They fight for the jewelry that is still with the in-laws, and the girl is not able to get divorced. And her life is like, all wasted. I mean, wasted in the sense that she can't move on. She's stuck to, that particular one marriage, which is all disturbed. So I'm also speaking from a kind of a personal experience. One of the girls shared this with me, that she was completely stuck. For 8 years, this divorce case has been going on. The jewelry is with the parents-in-laws, and they don't want to return it. And her parents are not allowing her to sign the divorce papers. Though she wants to move on, she is now economically independent, and but she has no say. The second thing which has become, I'm only speaking from these personal experiences with certain friends. Second thing which has become very evident these days is like, it's kind of become trendy in the sense. So if a girl has a child, the woman is given the custody of the child, through negotiation, and in the negotiation they decide that the boy will not pay, the man will not pay any alimony. So only, he puts that condition that I will not pay you any alimony, so you get the custody of the child, otherwise I am ready to take the child. So that's another thing which is, I mean, it's kind of a blackmail, and of course, mothers are after all mothers, and that's where they break, and they want the child to them. And so 3-4 cases I've come across of my friends where they've come back with the child with zero alimony.
Yeah, all this kind of exploitation which is taking place in the name of dowry, marriage, and so what women are at lost, because we generally we are being taught in that way, we are being brought up in that way, that okay, matlab, court may the man will say, okay, I don't have any job, I have lost my job, and now this girl has no way to prove that he is earning so much of money, or he is having a business which is which is earning a lot of money. So in the courts, but what I'm seeing is that these kind of issues are there, that women, as women, we don't know, we never ask कि वो husband का कितना income है, कितना earning है, उसका क्या property है, and that is what where we are at loss, because again in the negotiations he will keep his arguments above, and we don't have anything to say. As women, we don't have anything, because we don't have any evidence to show that we know how much is his income, and he says कि नहीं, इसकी तो अच्छी job है, so she should pay money to me because I'm unemployed. So these kind of cases are also coming. So you never know, like so we have to be make our maybe children aware since very beginning, that okay, you have to be economically independent, economically you have to be be aware of your rights and all. So, that kind of thing should be there. This is what I feel.
At least keep your money to yourself if you're working, have your savings. I mean, it's like as you plan for your pension, you start plan for at least 5 years after your marriage. You know, इतना कर savings लेके ही शादी करो.
So yeah, even the keeping, joint accounts with husbands and then husbands taking money out of those accounts. So all those kind of cases are coming to the courts, and we really don't know what to do in such kind of cases. So it's a struggle. I think it's a long battle that we have to fight. We have to really think about all this, because we are not talking about all these issues. What the discussions in the courts is basically on, uh, false cases hai, ye cases nahi, maintenance nahi de sakte. All those kinds of discussions are taking place, but we are not talking about how to empower women in such kind of situations. So maybe we have to have more of such forums and discussions and brainstorming around these issues, that how to support women when she's in such kind of situation.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us here today and patiently answering all our questions. We look forward to seeing you in all our future IMPRI events as well.
Yeah, so we can end today's proceedings. It was wonderful having the two speakers. They spoke very well, and we learned about internationally what is happening, and in the forensics field, so many things we have learned today. So maybe we can just find out today's session.
So as we are through with all our sessions for the day, I would like to go ahead with the thank you note. As we come to the end of day 4 of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Cohort 2, Awareness of Policies and Governance, an online national spring school program, a 4-week online immersive certificate training course, I, Yashika, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Gender Impact Studies Center. We are grateful to our experts for day 4, Ms. Anju Dubey Pandey ji, Professor Vina Vaswani ji, and Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam ji, for taking out their valuable time and allowing the participants to learn from the online certificate program. We thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. Readings for the session have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for learning. We look forward to welcoming you on our 5th day of this certification course on 19th March at 6 p.m. Theme for day Maya Avasthi ji, Advocate Celine Thomas ji, and Advocate Shalu Nigam ji. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a good evening. Thank you.